All right, let's look at selection, specifically the construct if-else. We remember that Jacobi and Bohm put forth a theory that all computer programming consists of sequence, selection, and repetition. Today we'll be looking at selection, specifically that if-else construct. Now selection with the if-else provides to us an action and an alternative action. An if-else construct involves a condition. That condition is evaluated. If it evaluates to true using Boolean logic, we execute some executable code. If it evaluates to false using Boolean logic, we have alternate executable code provided to us. Now an if statement looks like this. I've got a condition that I evaluate. If it evaluates to true, I execute the associated code. And here's an example. I have an int a assigned a value of 5. If a is greater than 0, I print out the string a is greater than 0. An if statement can also include a block of code, can involve a block of code. So if my condition of value is true, I will execute all the code within that block. And here I have 2 lines of code. And here's an example. I have an int b given a value of 7. If b is less than 10, I will print out add 1 to b, and I will do so with incrementing b. Now the if-else construct provides me with a condition and associated executable code. It also provides me with alternative executable code. And here's an example. I have a condition I evaluate. If it evaluates to true, I execute the associated code. If it evaluates to false, I go to the else statement and execute the code associated with that else. Here's an example. I have an integer, an int, a, given a value of 5. If a is greater than 0, I print out a is greater than 0. If not, that is, if a is not greater than 0, I print out a is not greater than 0. Now the if-else statement can involve multiple lines of code, a block of code. And here I have an example of a block of code associated with the if statement. If the condition evaluates to true, I will execute the 2 blocks of code within the 2 lines of code within that block. And here's an example. I have an int a given a value of 10. If a is greater than 10, I will print out a is greater than 10 and thus greater than 0. If a is not greater than 10, I will print out the line a is less than or equal to 10. Now I can have if-else statements nested. I have a series of if-else statements. The else of an if is another if. So I have a series of if-else statements. The else of an if is another if. Subsequent if statements are asked if the previous if statements are false. And here's an example of a nested if-else. I have a condition, condition 1. If it evaluates to true, I execute the associated code. If it is not true, I go to the else that follows. That else provides me with another if statement. That's the executable line of code for that else. And I have a condition, condition 2. If condition 2 evaluates to true, I will execute the executable code associated with it. If not, I'll go on to the else. That else is itself another if, condition 3. If condition 3 is true, I will execute the associated executable code. If not, I'll go on to the else. That else provides me with another if. I test to see if condition 4 is true. If it is, I execute the associated code. If not, I associate the code associated with the else. And here in the final else, I see I don't have another if. This is the end of this construct. I have just a line of executable code. Now what you want to note is that when I have a condition evaluate to true, I execute the associated code and then leave this construct. If condition 1 evaluated true, I would execute the code associated with it and then get out of the construct. Not execute any more else's or ifs, anything. I'm out of the construct. As soon as I have a condition evaluated true, I'm done. After I execute the associated executable code. And here's an example. I have an int a given a value of 10, b is given a value of 20, c 30, and d 40. If a is greater than b, I will print out a is greater than b. If it is not, I'll go to my else, and my else is another if statement. I'll test if B is greater than C. If it's true, I'll print out B is greater than C. If not, I'll go to the else, which gives me another if. If C is greater than D, that's the test I'll execute. I'll then, if it's true, print out C is greater than D. If not, I'll go to the final else, and that will print out D is the largest number. Now I can have blocks of code associated with either the ifs or the elses, and here's an example of that. So here I have my ints A, B, C, and D, and if A is greater than B, I will print out that means that, and then A is greater than B. And we'll see that I can have blocks of code associated with either the ifs or the elses. In conclusion, when we look at an if-else, we have a condition with associated executable code. We have alternative executable code. With a nested if-else, we have a series of if-else statements. The else of an if is another if. Subsequent if statements are asked if the previous if statements are false. Thank you.